it's the summer, so it's a little bit more challenging to get folks to convene right now. So, but I think just to start off, I wanted to just open the floor to provide some board updates. We can reintroduce ourselves if everyone wants to go around and introduce themselves, since I know it's been a long time since folks have met. There might be some new folks. So just to start off, my name is Abby Rim. I'm the acting executive director of the Vermont State Workforce Development Board. I've been in this role for about a month now. For some of you who aren't aware, Tori Biondolillo was the executive director for the board, and she is currently on a leave of absence. She's running the governor's campaign, so she is not with us at the moment, but very much hopes to return in full capacity in November. But until then, I'm stepping in and filling her role, which I'm very excited about. So for any of you who are not aware, I apologize for that last minute announcement, but given the nature of what she was going to do, it was just a quick, clear cut going over to the campaign office. So if anyone has any questions or wants to touch base offline, I'm happy to do that. And then if we want to just go, I'll pick someone, and then if you want to pick the next person to just speak and introduce themselves. So Marianne, if you want to go ahead.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Marianne Sheehan. I work for the Vermont Business Roundtable Foundation, and the programs of the foundation include Vermont Talent Pipeline.
And really, also, if there's any updates, sorry, Marianne, any updates that are going on that you just want to let the group know, anything that you want to plug, feel free to do that as well now too.
Sure. I'm right now I'm working with healthcare, manufacturing, and construction, and this week we're hoping to kick off a construction apprenticeship program with associates and builders and contractors with all the employers in our state. And it's a joint effort, and it's going to be taught by Resource Vermont. So there's a lot more I could tell you about, but that's all I'm going to tell you today. Sophie?
Sorry, Teams is more like a foreign language to me. I have to adjust to how to get my mic on and stuff. So I'm Sophie Zadatny. I'm the Chancellor for the Vermont State Colleges system. So obviously workforce and career pathways is really critical for us. So again, working with the Community College of Vermont, Vermont Technical College, and then the other two universities, really looking for ways to build and strengthen on that. We do have our new president for Vermont State University, Parwinder Grewal, who is serving as the president of the three institutions that are coming together. So that's Castleton, NVU, and Vermont Tech. And he is very, very committed on workforce development and bringing workforce, sort of weaving that in through academic programs, as well as developing, more pathways and credit-bearing courses and maybe non-credit as well, where that makes sense. So really looking forward to, expanding partnerships as we move forward. And I will turn it over to Nicole Miller.
Thanks, Sophie. My name is Nicole Miller. I'm the Executive Director here at Vermont After School as of July 1, taking over for Holly Morehouse. We have a few workforce initiatives that we're working on currently. One is working with CCV to enroll providers in our CCV courses that will help them earn the After School and Youth Work Certificate. Excuse me. And then we also are working with a subcommittee of the After School task force that's created by the governor to help think about youth pathways to career opportunities. And I will pass to Adam.
Excellent. Hi there. Sorry for my tardiness. Glad I caught on time for this. My name is Adam Grinold, Executive Director of the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation and Chair of the Workforce Board. We do a lot of work around career readiness here in our organization. So working closely with Mark and his team. Good to see Mark. So glad to be here, and good to see everybody. And I guess I'm to pass to somebody, but I am at a disadvantage and I don't know who's gone.
I'll go, Adam.
Okay, thank you.
Sounds good. Nice to see you as well. Mark Gibo. I am a school counselor at Bellows Falls Union High School within the Wyndham Northeast Supervisory Union in Westminster, Vermont. I am the outgoing work-based learning coordinator, and the new work-based learning coordinator is on the call with us today too. So I'll pass to her next. We have a really robust program that aligns very closely with our personalized learning plans here in grades 9 through 12. We offer students, as part of our career exploration, the opportunity to participate in informational interviewing, job shadowing, and internships beginning in grade 9 through grade 12 in collaboration with both the River Valley Technical Center and Wyndham Regional Career Center. We are also partnered with the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation and have worked with their Pathlines and Pipeways coordinator, Christy Beatty, for quite some time at this point and have a good relationship there. And so this year, my role is really to be there to answer questions for Heather and to complete my work-based learning coordinator's license. So I'll pass it to Heather.
Great, thank you, Mark. As Mark said, I'm brand new to this position and the questions will be aplenty, I promise you, Mark. So I'm excited to meet all of you as I get started on this new endeavor. I have been in our school system for many, many years, and previous to this was our student assistance program coordinator here. So I have familiarity with our students and our families and our staff. So I'm excited for this new endeavor and I look forward to working with you all. And was there a Rick, maybe?
Hey there, guys. Rick Bugbee from Associates for Training Development. We operate workforce development projects for older workers. We get funding for Vermont from USDOL, Vermont Department of Labor, and from Dale, all geared around older worker training leading to re-entering the workforce. Most of the programs we run are internship based. Where our older adults go into an internship, learn occupational skills, social skills, etc., and then it hopefully prepares them to re-enter the workforce. So career pathways, we hope, we expect and want it to be part of an older adult's path as well. We have a lot of older adults that have been out of the workforce for a period of time, so they're jumping onto their career pathway maybe late in life, but we still feel that there's a place for them. And they can be a value add to employers. And as a side note, if you know of some older adults that may need some workforce development training or occupational skills training, we have plenty of open slots. COVID sort of crushed our enrollment numbers. And or if you know of a nonprofit that'd be interested in hosting an older adult in an internship, please connect with me. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, I gotta pass it to someone. I'm sorry, I will pass it to Sarah.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sarah Kleinman. I work with the University of Vermont. I'm in the College of Ag and Life Sciences, part of Extension, and I'm the director of 4-H Family and Migrant Programs. We support a lot of opportunities for both young people and some older individuals to explore their career pathways. Right now, we're in the process of standing up a new 501c3 along partners to support the First Robotics Initiative and working with many businesses and folks across the state, both for FRC, FTC, and FLL robotics. Other examples of workforce development experiences we've had this summer for young people is an ag or a food systems ag tour where they went to a variety of businesses and entities, helping young people to see that there's a lot more, many more careers besides farming within the food systems arena. We also stood up an agritech, what we called agritech programming, which was an intensive experience on campus, followed by presentations in the agri-science arena. So those are just a couple examples. Another was a Natural Resource Management Academy, again, helping teens explore careers in environmental stewardship. So there's a variety of different things. And then one other new initiative that I'll share about is an educational learning hub for migratory farm workers. Many of them are domestic individuals and are looking to expand through certification programs and other initiatives. And so that is in the process of being created, harnessing all the different educational opportunities we offer for that particular population and putting it into a online portal. And I will pass that over to Rebecca.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Capsalas. You can actually call me Becky. And I am the Network Director of Talent Acquisition. So as the title suggests, for the UVM Health Network, I oversee recruiting and staffing for all of the hospitals in our affiliation, including the network. That is every position that you could imagine, with the exception of physicians. So actually, my team does not support physician recruitment, or does not support most of the physician recruitment, I should say, from across the affiliates. I have a vested interest in really supporting any efforts for workforce development, ideally starting in, middle school and starting to build pipelines into positions that we can support in the hospital. So any day of the week, I have about 2,500 open positions, positions that range from environmental services up through, advanced practice roles, and everything in between. So anything that I can do to support pipelining efforts and workforce development, I am happy to do that. And I don't know who to pass the mic to, so I apologize. I was late to this meeting, so I'm not sure if there's anybody outstanding.
I don't believe there is. Is anyone not gone? Adam?
I just have a quick question for Becky. Of the 2,500 empty spots, how many in total is the network employ?
So I'm not sure if I understand your question. So there's the network, which is actually almost sort of like a ghost association, right? And then there's each of the networks, each of the organizations. So UVM Medical Center, Champlain Valley Physicians Hospital, Central Vermont Medical Center, Home Health and Hospice, Porter Medical Center, Elizabethtown Community Hospital in New York, Alice Hyde in New York. So those are all employed by the variety of all of those affiliates.
Well, I guess I'm just trying to understand if you have 2,500 vacancies, what percentage of the total employment does that represent?
Oh, you mean, oh, gotcha. Okay. We've got 16,000 FTEs across all affiliates.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Does anyone else have any other questions or follow-up for anyone? No? Okay, great. So for today, I sent out an agenda yesterday, just going over, or this morning, I'm sorry, just what we're going to discuss today. I have some data that we're planning on to review that the Department of Labor sends over to us. So we're just going to go through that and then just decide some top priorities and brainstorm some deliverables for the group, and also review a mission statement that we can then fine tune just to get a better focus with this committee group, since again, we haven't met in a while, and just trying to organize what our charge is going to be as a group. Does anyone have any questions or anything? No? Great. All right, so I will go ahead and share my screen, and then I will not be able to see you all. So if anyone does have any questions, just feel free to give a shout. Can everyone see is it showing my presentation screen?
We see it.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, so again, as I'd mentioned, we received this data from Matt Barowitz over at the Department of Labor, and so I just thought that it would be a good idea to ground us in the situation that we're in, although I'm sure most of us here are very familiar, but this is recent data that we received, so I thought we would just go over it. So to start off, these are some numbers regarding population by age in the state of Vermont. This is from the US Census, and just doing a comparison from 2000 to 2020. So looking at these numbers with Vermont, showing the increase in our age and our demographics. So the population of Vermonters age 65 and up increased by roughly 43,000 from 2000 to 2020. So that's about a 55.9% increase. 55.9% of the group. So we have an increase there in that population. Then looking at Vermonters aged 20 to 34, we also see an increase of about 7,478 since 2000. So again, that's another group that is increasing, but not significantly enough compared to the 65 and older crowd. Then looking at Vermonters aged 55 and up, making up about 34.7% of the state population. There's also an increase there compared to when it used to be about 22.1%. So again, we're seeing an increase there. And then looking at Vermonters under the age of 20 which was making up about 21.9% of the state population versus about 27.3% in the 2000s. So with this particular slide, I think it's important to note that we have an older population that's growing quicker than our younger population, especially those in the under the age of 20. And so I think when we're thinking about career pathways, it's really important to think about, like Rick had noted, engaging with the older workforce that we have, because regardless, we need to consider not just engaging with our youth in schools, engaging them in those career pathways, but older folks that are still here as that population gets bigger and bigger. Moving on to labor force and population. This is a ratio of folks that are engaged within our labor force in the state of Vermont compared to the population. So the ratio of labor force to population peaked back in 2009 and 2010 with about 57.5% of the population working or actively seeking work. And since then, we've seen a decline. Obviously, as you can see in this chart, in 2021, it was at about 50.8%. And then just comparing that to the recent LMI data that we have with the Department of Labor, our unemployment rate is about 2.2% as of June of 2022. So with that, again, there's a missing group that seems to not be engaged in our workforce, a very low unemployment rate. So figuring out how to tap into those folks when we're thinking about developing our career pathways. Then next, looking at county labor force data, the percentage change since our peak, again, based on each county's respective peak labor force numbers, all counties have seen a decline in labor force. So looking at, all of them have seen a decline overall, but in certain areas, they're seeing that decline since further back. So places like Bennington, since 2006, you have a 17.8% change. I think surprisingly, folks will think about places like Chittenden County, where there's a lot of development and a larger population, but even there, you're still seeing a negative decline since 2019. And really surprisingly, you see that over 8 counties have seen more than a 10% decline in labor force. So again, I think that while we tend to think of Vermont as a small state and we can think of solutions that'll be applied across the entire state, I think that while we're thinking about these career pathways and developing how to engage with folks, there's also targeted approaches that need to be taken into account when looking at this data. And then lastly, although I think that a lot of those statistics are showing us that we need to be thinking outside of the box and engaging with our older workforce, it is still important to obviously take into account the numbers that we're seeing in our schools. And with the statewide education enrollment from 2004 to 2021, we're seeing a decline in enrollment of about 21.3% since 2004. If you take into account pre-K enrollment, when that's included, you're looking at about 15.5%. So again, career pathways, starting and engaging with kids when they're young, but also taking into account that that population size that we're hoping to tap into and feed into our workforce is also shrinking. So with that being said, does anyone have any questions about any of that data or anything that they'd like to highlight or review? Again, I can't see any of you all, so it'll just have to be a shout.
This is Sophie. I just had a quick question. So with the pre-K enrollment numbers, is that actually encouraging because that's a smaller decrease? Does that mean that we've got more kids, relatively speaking? I mean, that there's more kids coming in through pre-K than we've got currently in K through 12. It's not as bad as K through 12. I guess I'm trying to figure out.
Yes, I think that's a good point to highlight. I do think that with the data that we've been seeing, everyone has been very cautious to say that any improvements that they're seeing are not necessarily a trend, but maybe a spike. So I'm not 100% sure, but that has been the overall message that I've been receiving in regards to increases for temporary amounts of time. But I can definitely ask and follow up if you'd like.
Sophie, I wonder on that if in the early 2000s there was less prevalence of pre-K programming. So we may just be seeing a change in the increased pre-K programs. I wonder.
Or decreased.
Yes, I think I was seeing it. Heather, are you on the call? I think.
Yeah, I am, because I think part of what's going on here is that the PK through 12 numbers are always higher than the K through 12 numbers. And if you look at 2015 and then for PK 12 and you look at K 12 in 2018, it's not like you're seeing a bump. So what it in K 12, so what it really probably is that we have a mix of private and public providers in the PK 12 numbers, and K 12 is only public students. And so you've got in fact, about 10 to 12% of our students in general in Vermont are in private settings. So I think that they're kind of like apples and oranges, because I think the K-12 numbers here are actually in public schools. I'd have to look at your source, Abby, but I think that might account for what the differences are.
And I'm happy to follow up with Matt to ask him about these numbers as well, if anyone has any other questions that come up. Okay, so just with that background, now we just wanted to review the mission statement of the group, see if we wanted to fine tune it, if anyone was strongly against the ideas that Tori and I had come up with, and then just review some goals and deliverables that we might have. And again, we can just review this, and then if I'll probably distribute it to the rest of the group and folks can provide feedback and we can go from there. But to start off with the mission statement that we had created based on the previous 2 meetings that we've had, we had come up with the mission for this group would be to organize, maintain, and further develop career pathways that are both accessible and transparent to all Vermonters. So how do folks feel about that?
I think that's a really good mission statement. This is Marianne. I don't know if you can see, but I like it because it doesn't say how we're going to do it. It just says that this is the goal of our group, and we can approach it from a lot of different ways. And I think we have a good group here to make it happen.
Great. Anyone else? Again, I know I'm throwing you all on the spot, so I'll send this out afterwards and folks can look it over and feel free to send edits then, but anyone else?
Wait, Abby, it's Nicole. I'm just appreciating the word transparent in this mission statement, because while there may be lots of different pathways that folks and organizations are working on, if folks don't know about them, that's really difficult. So there's a communication aspect that's really important, and I appreciate the word transparency.
Definitely. And I think that's a big thing that we tend to focus on is obviously there's tons of great work going on throughout the state, but figuring out how to get folks out of their silos and understanding what's going on around so that we can all collaborate in these efforts that we're all reaching for the same goal. So I agree. Anyone else? No, it's an easy group today. You guys are, oh, Heather, go ahead.
Abby, yeah, I had one other thing. So I'm wondering if we want to put something in here that's about, it's not just that they're accessible and transparent. That's super important though. But I think we also want these to be attractive to people because of the reasons you just said, which are we don't have enough people in K-12 coming up or existing. And so we need to actually also develop career pathways that are attractive to even marketing to get more people to actually come here or to at least be engaged in our workforce. I guess they don't have to come here, for instance, if we develop career pathways that really are, to the extent we can, fostered around telework, for instance, but their tax base could come here. They don't physically have to come here.
Okay. Yeah, definitely can add a segment on that. Becky?
I'm just wondering if transparent is strong enough of a way to describe what's needed. So like I'm thinking about with the K through 12 group, and I know that maybe we don't have much influence on this, but like to me, what needs to happen is it needs to be like part of the curriculum, you know, like we need to have it like an intentional education. It doesn't have to just be like advertised somewhere, like somebody needs to be really intentional about it. And that would be true of older workers also that we're trying to reach. I don't know what the right term is for that. But I keep thinking like it's got to be like more in our face, more like this is how you do it. Here, I'm going to help you do it, you know, rather than people just sort of looking and finding it themselves or running some advertisements or whatever. Again, I don't really know what that is, but it's just one thing that comes to mind for me. Like,
Right. Well, it seems like transparent might be more, needing something more proactive than that, because transparent might come across as, oh, we have these things and we're displaying them, but either a more targeted or intentional approach, like you're saying,
right,
is what we
like
really need.
intentional, targeted,
And
proactive.
Mhm.
Yeah, like all of those strong action words, like
Mhm.
I think we need to have some bit of action in there.
Okay.
And so I
Definitely.
was thinking about what Becky just said, and like sophomore year, all the high schools have like a sophomore summit, which is like a career day thing. And different people do it in different ways, but it's usually just like a day. And I'm like, I don't feel like that's hitting it enough. Like, and then we think about how years ago we instituted like health education. Everybody had to take it at some point during high school. It was a requirement. I'm like what kind of like institutionalizing could this be? You know, how to make it more proactive.
I agree. And then I think figuring out it probably is a little bit, well, obviously it would come with its own challenges within schools being proactive, but then also figuring out ways to be proactive with more marginalized groups or adults or dislocated workers, figuring that out, because obviously there are two different ways to reach those groups. Sophie, did you have your hand?
Yeah, I did. I would be interested in hearing from Rick too, because I think a lot of it for older workers is also wraparound services. You know, there are other supports that are needed. So yeah, accessible kind of captures that, but I think it also needs to be something that works for them, right? Because there are other barriers. It's not just access, but there's, you know, childcare issues, transport issues, other issues. So I think if we genuinely want to make these kinds of programs and pathways more accessible, we really need to think through whether there need to be wraparound services to help support particularly adult workers rejoining the workforce.
Yeah, that's exactly right. All of our older adults have some sort of wraparound services, the ones that Sophie mentioned, housing, you know, whatever it may be, that there's more than just the job, right? The training or the job that the person's going to get. It's what else do they need to be successful in that job. And I think another huge part is we need to inform. I think a lot of adults as we get older have less confidence in themselves and feel that people won't be confident in them. So I think we need to educate and inform the older adults that here's what accessible to you. Here's what this pathway is all about, and here are all the opportunities within the pathway to find what you're looking for. Because I think a lot of us as we get older, especially if we've been unemployed for a short period of time or more, that can impact our psyche a little bit. And knowing that there is a path for an older adult that includes them and that there's employers at the end of that path that want them, I think is super important to go against the whole age discrimination concept. I mean, I hear that all the time. No one's going to hire me. I'm too old. And we have to, from an older adult perspective, we have to break down that barrier for them, that mentality. And that's half the battle.
Definitely. And I think adding on to what Deputy Secretary Boucher was saying about, at least with jobs or career pathways, making them look cool and exciting, I think that there's also power in mentorship or folks seeing examples of success stories coming out of adult workers getting jobs, or seeing that you can re-enter the workforce. So somehow figuring out how to some sort of marketing or like rebranding to know what's possible, because half of it is that, you know, you might not be aware of the career pathways that are available, or you might not be aware that if you're a certain age that you have all these support services to help you get back into the workforce. So I think figuring out a way to show that to folks would take down some of those barriers that you're talking about, Rick.
Yeah, we need to market to the 16-year-old, but also to the 65-year-old, because as the data just showed, you know, 40% is 55 and older, whatever the percents are. So we need to market to all age groups, and it's going to have to be done differently too, right? Because the messaging have to be different.
Right. Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think that we feel that way a lot with the social media content that we have. And, you know, you're going to reach a certain group on Facebook, or you're going to reach a certain demographic on TikTok or offline or whatever it might be that you're doing, but taking into account that the groups are different. So, does anyone else have any other feedback on the mission statement or anything that's been said?
I mean, the mission statement can be pretty broad, but then you can have like a vision statement about what's your vision for this pathway, which is, I think, a lot of the things that we were just talking about. You know, how do we see this working? What's our vision for this? I mean, maybe that's a different way of flushing out the mission statement more, because I don't think you want a mission statement that's too wordy, that goes on forever and ever and ever either.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Any other thoughts? Right. So I can work on fine tuning that a little bit more. I can send it out to folks, and then we can keep working on editing that and crafting it. And I like the idea of having a mission and then also a vision statement. Because I agree with you, you don't want the mission statement to be too long and wordy for folks. So and this might also tie into this. We just going off of the last two meetings that we had developed some committee goals that we thought that folks would be interested in off of just the feedback that we were receiving. So I just wanted to review them, and then obviously we can add some, tweak them, whatever you all are interested in. But I think we're just trying to identify a few goals and try to get a few successes off the bat, just so that we have some momentum building with this group. So for the goals that we had created from the last few meetings, we had better organize and streamline access to career pathways in Vermont, start engaging with Vermont students on career pathways education by, we had said 5th grade, but if folks feel like that should change, we definitely can do that. And then promote non-traditional career pathways to adult workers and or those looking to re-enter the workforce. And then on the next slide, we had a few actual deliverables that we thought could help work towards these goals. But first, I just wanted to open it up to folks about if they don't like any of these goals, or they want to add any, or feel like anything's really missing here.
I'll just jump in. I like 5th grade. Oftentimes we start too late, and I think that's a great starting point.
Okay. Does anyone else feel that it's too late or too early, or that we should change any of that for 5th grade?
I'm wondering if there's some kind of mission that we've missed with DEI. Just because, like, I heard a report on the news this morning about how you know, who's moved out of the state and who's moved into the state, and it had to do with more you know, people who are not well, they're like new Americans who have moved in, and more people who have moved out of the state who are Vermonters, fewer people coming from other states. I only caught a piece of the news story, but I don't know if that's one of our goals or if it's part of a goal.
Yeah, I mean, I think that should definitely be baked into everything that we do, and it's an ongoing conversation that we're also having with the board and the makeup of the board. And I think one working with Susanna Davis in her office, who runs the Office of Equity in here, is telling us an interesting statistic that I heard was that the group of folks that we have the most diversity in is actually younger people. So I think that it's also important to note that those folks are the ones that, if we're trying to increase diversity and also accessibility, that those are a lot of young people that we would definitely want staying in our workforce and trying to engage them at an early age to get them to stay here. So I agree with you. And I think that developing some sort of goal to acknowledge and be focused on that group would be important. Anyone else? Do we like the goals that are here? Do we not like them? Adam?
I just wonder what other folks think when they hear the word adult worker. Given, is this a 25-year-old? Or 23-year-old? Or is this conjuring, the sort of senior worker? And does this cover both all populations?
Oh, Rick, do you have any input on that of what you all generally use, or?
Right. I mean, when I hear adult worker, that's a 25-year-old. We're more apt with our more senior. We usually don't use the word senior. We usually use the word mature, seasoned, something like that. Older, even sometimes, although that's not great either. But yeah, to me, adult is a 25-year-old. And I think the non-traditional career pathways is great for adult workers, but there's different levels of adult. The 25 and the 65-year-old, their pathways are going to be different. Obviously, something else, I don't know if it's part of a goal, but I think we would like to see that part of anyone's pathway from the 5th grader to the 65-year-old, there has to be digital literacy built into it. And it used to be that, at least for the older population, we always used to use, adult technical education centers, even Vermont Adult Learning, and so forth. And it just seems like there's not a lot of digital or even the libraries or senior centers would do it for our older adults. And now there doesn't seem to be a lot of digital literacy training for any level, unless you want to go to CCV, right? CCV has classes, state colleges. But for those that are basic digital literacy, doesn't seem to be much of that in Vermont. So I don't know. I just want to throw that out there. I think there's there's something missing within a career pathway for opportunities, especially something that's affordable as well, that I think has to be part of a career pathway, regardless of whether you are in middle school or 65. So I just wanted to throw that out there at some point. Maybe we can expand on it.
Right, and that might be something that we establish as a committee, certain criteria within career pathways that we feel like across all career pathways that are needed. So whether that's digital literacy or something else, but I think there's two things. There's talking about the accessibility and the access and the folks that we're trying to reach with these career pathways, and then actually the content within the career pathways, I think, is what you're getting at, Rick. And I think that both are important to figure out where the gaps are in those, whether those are sectors without career pathways or actual career pathways and what they entail. But I would agree with you that identifying gaps like that is important. Anybody else? I don't know, Heather, did I see a hand from you?
You did, yeah. I was more just in response to the question about the adult worker. To me, it also meant younger, but those looking to re-enter the workforce did conjure up an image of, not a 25-year-old for me. And also, just a comment on the 5th grade, our vision for our district is to move to a K through 12 work-based learning program and really do some introduction prior to that. So I appreciate that this says by 5th grade. There's some flexibility there, and I think would be a really great place to start. We plan to do a little bit more with elementary, but really start focusing on we have a middle school in our district that starts at grade 5.
Okay. Anyone else? No. All right, so, and again, I'll send these out. If anyone has any other goals that they feel like we really should be focusing on, we can always add them and it's flexible, but so based off of those goals, there were a few ideas that were thrown around at the last few meetings. So we just wanted to write them down and see if there was any of them that we really wanted to focus on moving forward. So to start off, really what the idea of a database was, create and maintain career pathway database on top 100 or whatever it might be. 100 was just a number that we went off of earning jobs in Vermont. So I think talking about career pathways, but also certain jobs that are going to be able to provide more and keep people here, or again, like Heather was saying, attract people to come here, I think is important. So not just any job. Rebecca or Becky?
Oh, sorry, I was going to let you go through the list, but I guess my thought is with that first item, I love it. Like, these are all the right things. And I think I was part of that meeting that helped propose these, but to elaborate on that first point, it's create and maintain career pathways database of top 100 earning jobs in Vermont. I assume that in that list, we would outline exactly what the pathway was to get there. So for instance, if one of the top earning jobs is being an engineer for Beta Technologies, we would identify exactly what somebody would need for education to do that. So associates in engineer or whatever it is, that we would be really clear about what would be needed to get there. It wouldn't just be listing the jobs, correct?
Yes, which again was with my hesitancy of saying top 100, because obviously that would be a very heavy lift for mapping out the career pathways there. But I think, again, having some, oh, yeah, Brick.
Sorry, the word earning is, I think if we just highlight the top earning jobs, we're going to be shutting out a lot of people that may never have the skills or not want one of the top earning jobs in Vermont. Whereas employers are telling us there's all kinds of entry level, $4, $5, $6 above minimum wage that they can't find people for. And there's probably a lot of Vermonters that are qualified for those jobs, but just for whatever reason can't find them, don't, whatever. So I just am a little skeptical if we use the word earning or we do the earning jobs, that may be shutting out a lot of people or a lot of occupations that also could benefit from the pathways.
And also maybe what it is, and I agree with you that that's one metric that folks might have of, oh, I want a top earning job, but for someone else, it might be flexibility in my job or commute, or I don't know, for someone who's maybe older and semi-retired wants to just have like a more social aspect to a job. So I think that there's also probably value in maybe creating different lists of things that folks might find appealing. And then you might also have folks who don't even realize that that's really what I'm looking for, and I can get that from this job. So right. I agree with you, and I think that maybe creating different lists.
Or maybe by industry.
Mm-hmm.
Healthcare, definitely. Manufacturing, et cetera.
Definitely. Nicole?
Yeah, tagging off of what you were just saying, I was wondering if growing was a better term. I'm not really sure. Maybe that's a separate list. I'm not sure. But or the ones that have the most vacancies in them, or like where we need the most workforce. I'm not quite sure if that's the right way to go, but I was trying to build off of what you were saying, Rick.
Right. I think the word might be in demand, Nicole. Because when we talk about critical jobs in an industry for the talent pipeline, one of the things that we do is we identify what critical means. So sometimes it means you need so many of them to operate. And another time it means if you don't have this one, you can't make it work. So frequently we have like RN is the most critical job, right? Registered nurse. But we also need a whole bunch of LNAs so that the RN can actually do the RN work. If we don't have the LNAs, then the RN ends up doing all that work. and then they're disgruntled, and then you lose them. And we don't want that to happen. So, you know, there's a lot of things that happen along a career pathway that make it successful. And one that is stackable or allows for growth with an easy on-ramp is what I think we're talking about here. Like, here's the most in-demand, you know, careers in this field. And here's how you start, here's the on-ramp, and here's how you can advance in it. I don't know.
Definitely. Yeah, so maybe some sort of other categorization I think would be important for that, but it sounds like folks like the idea of a database. Any other thoughts on that one?
We do have My Future VT that sort of is a database,
Mhm.
but I'm not sure it has everything that we want it to have. It just has some of it.
Right.
know?
So, and I think we had actually talked about figuring out also where that would be housed, and that was something that we had talked about. So working with them to elaborate on that, but also talking about, yeah, where this would be housed was something that we were thinking with them as well. So, so going off of that, another goal that we had was create and maintain a distribution network for the database of career pathways to school, businesses, community organizations, and online. So I think that figuring out where this information is then going to go, because again, as we were talking about earlier with transparency and accessibility, if we have all these career pathways mapped out, if folks don't know how to access that information, then that's not much good in that. So creating some sort of other contact sheet or information to then distribute this database was another goal that we had. Does anyone have any thoughts on that one? Also, for any of these, since you all have a lot more experience in this space, if any of these are things that you feel are already happening or in the works, that's always great to know too, because we obviously don't want to be duplicating efforts here. So the third one, as we had mentioned today and at the last meeting, declaring some sort of career pathways month, or I know you all had mentioned a sophomore summit. So if there's replication in that we as a group want to work on organizing or hosting some sort of sophomore summit. I know that, I think, was it Becky, you had talked about how helpful that program was with one of your children, I think, or so some sort of event if we wanted to do that, just to bring the idea of career pathways to folks. So a more hands-on approach. That was another potential action item that we had. Does anyone have any thoughts on that one?
We had great luck working with the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation down here in Windham County. They did a fantastic job. And so I would look to Christy Beatty if we're thinking of doing something on a much larger scale. She just really has that down and did a fantastic job.
Okay, great. And yeah, again, we don't want to be duplicating efforts, but if there's something that's happened and it was really great and effective, then obviously building off of that and that momentum would be fantastic. So all right, great. And then another one that we had, and I think that this one is bringing the idea of career pathways to people at a young age and meeting them where they're at. And this might be for younger folks rather than adult workers, but we had been having conversations with Patrick LeDuc from VSAC about an app that he's thinking of developing, and it would be to engage students at a very young, or kids even at a very young age, using an app to guide them through from a very young age of different career opportunities that they have in Vermont. And so I didn't know if that it's in the very beginning stages, but if folks were interested in that, I know that he'd be willing to come and talk to us about it, see if there's any ways that we can support those efforts. But we had a meeting with him and I was just really impressed with the idea of creating an app, because that's how, especially with younger folks, that's meeting them on their phones or through apps is definitely the way to engage them and get them to learn that information. So that was another idea that we had thought would be something that maybe the committee would be interested in. Adam, did you have a hand raised?
Yeah, thank you. So here at the BDCC, we have received an earmark for the development of an app, and this app will essentially, when put in the hands of workers or any adult, will solicit information about their life history. And it's a AI informed app that will eventually lead them through to identify essentially what skills they've acquired in life. And through the AI process, be able to then have a list of skills, scrape local postings, identify jobs that exist with those skills listed, or pathways. So this is going to begin probably in February of next year. While the funding is for us in our region, this, in order to have enough data and to be useful, has to be done at a statewide level. We're doing this in partnership with Green River Software and Skill Lab. Skill Lab is the underlying technology, and they did this in Europe around the Syrian refugee crisis and won the Google AI worldwide competition for this product. And they're just trying to see if it can translate to an American way in which we post jobs. You know, in Europe, it's much more prescribed. It's easier to align those things. So they want to see, and they've partnered with us here in Vermont in a small market to see if they can really make this work. So, you know, it's not yet ready for prime time, but like what Patrick is envisioning, I think this group could be really help inform the outcome of that, the development of that, and really be a participant in that project. So I just wanted to share that with everybody here today.
Yeah, that's very exciting. And I think, I know that with Patrick's, it was definitely more targeted at youth and especially in schools, and there'd be a component where that schools would be rolling it out for the students, and counselors would be doing that as well. So I don't know if there'd be a way to either combine efforts or obviously support individual efforts, but that sounds great. Did anyone have any comments on that one? Marianne, did you have your hand up?
You know, my hand has been up for kind of a long time. I don't know how to lower it, but
Okay.
I was thinking, I put something in the chat. I'm like, is there any way that we could like use some of the data from the My Future VT to help inform that? I mean, I'm wondering if there's any kind of cross reference information that would be useful for,
Definitely.
you know, for either for Patrick's or for the one at BDCC. Did I say that right? BDCC? Yeah.
Okay, great. And then I just want to be respectful of everyone's time. So for the last potential action item that we had was some sort of social media campaign highlighting non-traditional career pathways. And so I think, as I touched on this earlier, I think some sort of social media or marketing around showing folks what's available, whether that's the career pathways that we have and the opportunities in Vermont, but then also the different types of workers that we have involved in those jobs. So showing folks, like you were saying, Rick, that depending on the age that you can enter into the workforce at any time. So I think getting that out in front of people is just as important of knowing what they're able to do here in Vermont. So Becky, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, the social media one, I love it. I'm just, as the, you know, mother of 2 teenagers, but also the daughter of parents that live in Vermont and are in their, you know, early 70s. I'm just trying to think of what that social media campaign would be that would hit those groups, right? Like, and that maybe that's for another day, but it's just something to think about. Like, not all social media is going to hit both groups that we need. You know, TikTok might be what it is for my teenagers, and Facebook would probably be for my parents or whatever, but just to be thoughtful of like what different groups use or don't use or is impactful for those groups.
Definitely. And I would agree. I think that there's not a one solution fits all for trying to reach the different groups that we're trying to reach. So I would agree with you. All right. Well, we only have a few more minutes. Does anyone have any final or closing thoughts on anything? I think for next steps, I will distribute this so that folks can provide feedback on the mission statement, any of the potential action items or goals, because obviously these are ideas that we've just come up with for the last few meetings that we've had with you all, but we're very open to suggestions. So if there's anything else or anyone thinks of anything, feel free to send me an email and I'll send it out for folks to review, and I'll post the meeting minutes as well if anyone wants to review. But are there any other final closing thoughts before we wrap up for today? No? Okay, great. Then I will give everyone back 1 minute of their Monday, and I hope everyone has a good afternoon.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you.